The morning light filtered through the tall windows of the Grand Palmer Hotel's ballroom, casting golden rectangles across the polished marble floor. Maylin moved quietly between the tables, her small frame hardly disturbing the air as she wiped down surfaces and aligned chairs with practiced precision. At 52, her movements were efficient but gentle, the result of 8 years working as part of the cleaning staff at one of the city's most prestigious venues. "They're expecting 300 guests tonight," said Rosita, her supervisor popping her head through the double doors. "Big charity thing for children's hospitals. Finish up in here, then help Davy with the entrance hall, okay?" Maylin nodded, her dark eyes crinkling at the corners as she smiled. She liked these quiet moments before events when the spaces belonged just to her. The ballroom, with its crystal chandeliers and soaring ceilings, felt like a different world compared to her tiny apartment in the east side of town, where she lived with her aging mother and teenage son. As she moved toward the windows to dust the sills, her gaze fell upon the grand piano sitting in the corner of the room. It was a magnificent Steinway, its black surface gleaming under the chandeliers. Maylin paused, her cleaning cloth suspended in midair. 8 years in this hotel, and she had never once touched that piano, though her fingers sometimes ached to do so. Glancing around to make sure she was alone, Maylin walked over to the instrument. She didn't sit, that would be too presumptuous, but she allowed her fingertips to brush the polished wood of its closed lid. A small sigh escaped her lips. "Don't even think about it," came a sharp voice from across the room. Maylin jumped back, her heart racing. Thomas Blackwell, the hotel manager, stood in the doorway, his tall figure imposing in a perfectly tailored suit. "That piano is worth more than you'll make in 10 years. "I'm sorry, sir," Maylin said quickly, returning to her cleaning cart. "I was just dusting." Thomas narrowed his eyes but seemed to accept her explanation. "Make sure everything is spotless. The Whitmores are hosting tonight, and they're very particular." "Yes, sir," she replied, keeping her eyes down as he left. Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. It wasn't the first time someone at the hotel had reminded her of her place. Though she had a degree in music education from her home country, here she was just another invisible worker, someone to be tolerated but not seen. By late afternoon, the ballroom had transformed. Florists had arranged stunning centerpieces on each table, lighting technicians had programmed the perfect ambiance, and caterers bustled in and out of the kitchen doors. Maylin had changed from her gray cleaning uniform into the black and white service attire required for event staff. She would be helping with coat check tonight, safely away from the main event. "Did you hear about the pianist?" Davy whispered to her as they folded napkins in the service area. He walked out during sound check. "Said the piano was impossible to play." "What do you mean?" Maylin asked, her interest piqued. "Something about it being badly out of tune. The tuner can't come until tomorrow, and the Whitmores are furious. Especially that son of theirs, Perry. You know, the one with the smug face who always treats us like dirt." Maylin nodded. She knew Perry Whitmore all too well, a 30-something heir to his family's banking fortune who seemed to take special pleasure in making the staff uncomfortable. Once he had deliberately spilled his drink on the floor right after she had mopped it, laughing as he walked away. "So, what will they do about the music?" she asked. Davy shrugged. "They've set up some recorded playlist, but it's not the same, is it? These fancy types, they expect live classical music with their champagne." As the evening began, Maylin stood at her post by the coat check, accepting designer jackets and wraps from guests who barely glanced at her. The women sparkled in diamonds and silk, while the men strutted in tuxedos, their voices loud with the confidence of wealth and privilege. From her position, she could just see into the ballroom. The piano sat untouched, its lid now open but no musician in sight. A soft background playlist of classical music came through the speakers, but it felt hollow in the grand space. An hour into the event, Perry Whitmore's voice rose above the crowd. He had clearly been enjoying the open bar, his face flushed and his movements exaggerated. He clinked a fork against his champagne glass repeatedly until the room quieted. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, his words slightly slurred, "I know we promised you live music tonight, but unfortunately our pianist had a difference of opinion with our piano." This drew polite laughter. "Apparently our Steinway isn't good enough for Maestro Reynard." Maylin felt a twinge of curiosity. If the piano truly was out of tune, it would take a skilled player to work around its flaws. However, Perry continued, his eyes scanning the room and then landing on the service area, I believe in making the most of our resources. Mei Lin felt a chill run down her spine as Perry's gaze fixed directly on her. He was walking toward the service entrance now, that familiar, cruel smile playing on his lips. "You there?" he called, pointing at her. "Coat check, girl," heads turned. Mei Lin froze, suddenly aware of hundreds of eyes on her. She wanted to disappear into the wall behind her. "Come here," Perry commanded, gesturing impatiently. With no choice but to obey, Mei Lin stepped reluctantly from behind the counter and walked toward him, feeling painfully conspicuous in her staff uniform among the glamorous guests. "What's your name?" Perry asked loudly. "Mei Lin, sir," she answered softly. "Speak up. We can't hear you," he said, clearly enjoying her discomfort. "Mei Lin," she repeated, more firmly this time. "Well, Mei Lin from Coat Check," he said, deliberately mispronouncing her name and making some guests chuckle. "I've seen you looking at our piano. Many times, actually. Do you play?" The question hung in the air. Mei Lin felt her mouth go dry. Around her, the wealthy crowd watched with expressions ranging from mild curiosity to outright amusement. Some looked uncomfortable, aware that Perry was likely setting up some form of humiliation. "I used to," she admitted quietly. It wasn't entirely true. She didn't used to play. She still played every chance she got on a small electronic keyboard in her apartment with headphones so as not to disturb her mother or the neighbors. But that part of her life remained hidden from her work. "Wonderful," Perry exclaimed with exaggerated enthusiasm. "Then tonight you'll be our entertainment." "I don't think," Mei Lin began, but Perry cut her off. "I insist," he said, no longer smiling. The command in his voice was clear. He took her elbow and guided her toward the piano, whispering in her ear as they walked. "Just so you know, the thing's completely out of tune. Professional couldn't even handle it. Should be funny to watch you try." Mei Lin's heart pounded against her ribs as they approached the magnificent instrument. The crowd parted for them, creating a clear path to the piano. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her back, could hear the whispers and suppressed laughter. "Ladies and gentlemen," Perry announced, raising his voice again, "while we wait for our technical difficulties to be resolved, Mei Lin from Coat Check has graciously volunteered to entertain us." The sarcasm in his voice was unmistakable. As she reached the piano bench, Mei Lin turned to see Thomas Blackwell, the hotel manager, watching with a frown from the edge of the room. His expression clearly said, "Don't make a scene, don't embarrass the hotel. Just play something simple and get it over with." She sat down slowly, adjusting the bench with trembling hands. The beautiful Steinway gleamed under the lights, waiting. Mei Lin placed her fingers on the keys, took a deep breath, and pressed one note. The sound that emerged was slightly flat, just as she'd been warned. She pressed another key, then another, testing the extent of the problem. Yes, the piano was certainly out of tune, but not impossibly so. To her trained ear, she could map the deviations, could already begin to work around them. For a brief moment, Mei Lin closed her eyes. The crowd, Perry Whitmore, the hotel, all faded away. In her mind, she was back in the conservatory where she had once studied, before life had taken an unexpected turn. Before her father's illness had drained their savings and forced her to abandon her education. Before the move to America and the endless string of jobs that had nothing to do with music. She opened her eyes, straightened her back, and prepared to play. Whatever happened next would change everything, though she didn't know it yet. All she knew was that the piano, despite its flaws, was finally under her fingers after all these years of silence, and she was ready to make it sing. The first notes Mei Lin played were tentative, a simple C major scale to test the waters. Even this basic sequence revealed the piano's problems. Some keys were sharp, others flat, creating an uneven sound that would challenge even experienced players. A few snickers rippled through the crowd. Perry Whitmore stood nearby, arms crossed, a smug smile on his face as he waited for the disaster he'd orchestrated. Mei Lin took a deep breath. She could play it safe, a simple tune performed quickly, then retreat to her post at Coat Check. That's what they expected. That's what would keep her job secure. But something inside her, some long dormant spark that had been smothered by years of practicality, flickered to life. "Mom?" Her son Jun stood in the doorway of her small bedroom, his lanky teenage frame filling the space. "There's a bunch of news vans outside our building, and Ms. Garcia from downstairs called. She says there's people asking about you." Maylin sat up, suddenly wide awake. What? You've gone viral, John said, holding up his own phone to show her. Look. The video playing on his screen showed her at the piano, lost in Rachmaninoff's concerto. Someone had captured the moment her eyes had closed, her face transformed by the music. The video had over 200,000 views. This is crazy, she whispered. Her mother called from the kitchen in rapid Mandarin. What's all this noise about? Why are there reporters? Did something bad happen? Maylin pulled on her robe and went to explain. But before she could reach the kitchen, her phone rang again. This time it was Thomas Blackwell, the hotel manager. Ms. Zhao, he said, his voice unusually deferential. I hope I'm not calling too early. No, it's fine, she replied, glancing at the clock. It was barely 7 a.m. I'm up. Good. There's been quite a reaction to your performance last night. I'm seeing that, Maylin said, peeking through the blinds at the news vans below. Mr. Blackwell, I'm very sorry if this has caused problems for the hotel. There was a pause, and then Blackwell laughed, a sound Maylin had never heard from him before. Problems? Quite the opposite. The Whitmores have received numerous calls praising their event. Mrs. Whitmore herself has been on the phone with me this morning. She'd like to speak with you directly, and he hesitated. I've been instructed to offer you a different position at the hotel. Different position? Yes, effective immediately if you're willing. House pianist, with performances during our Sunday brunch service and evening events in the lounge. The salary would be significantly better than your current compensation. Maylin sat down heavily on the edge of her bed. House pianist? But what about the regular cleaning schedule? My shifts? This would replace those duties entirely, Blackwell said. Mrs. Whitmore was quite insistent. She's also arranged for our piano to be properly tuned this morning. He paused again. I owe you an apology, Ms. Zhao. Had I known of your talent. It's fine, Maylin said quickly, uncomfortable with his changed tone. I never mentioned it. After ending the call, she sat staring at her phone. John appeared at her side. So? He asked eagerly. What did they say? They've offered me a job playing the piano, she said, still processing the news. At the hotel, June's face lit up. Mom, that's amazing. You've got to take it. From the kitchen, her mother called, What's happening? Who was on the phone? Before Maylin could answer either of them, her phone rang again. This time it was Professor Chen. Maylin, he said warmly when she answered. I hope you don't mind the early call. I suspect your phone has been quite busy. A little, she admitted. I've been thinking about our conversation last night. He continued, and I've made some calls. The Shanghai Philharmonic is touring next month. They'll be in town for 3 performances. Their pianist for the Grieg Piano Concerto has fallen ill and they need a replacement. Maylin's breath caught. Professor Chen, I haven't played with an orchestra in over 20 years. The muscle memory is there. I heard it last night, he insisted. This could be your second chance, Maylin. The opportunity you were denied all those years ago. I have responsibilities, she said automatically. My son, my mother, think about it, Professor Chen urged. This isn't just about you anymore. That video of your performance, people are inspired by your story. The cleaning woman with the soul of a concert pianist. It resonates. After she hung up, Maylin went to the kitchen where her mother was making tea. At 78, Li Zhao moved slowly but insisted on maintaining her independence. She looked up as Maylin entered. So many phone calls this early, she said in Mandarin. What happened at work last night? As simply as she could, Maylin explained about the piano, the performance, and the video that had unexpectedly captured people's attention. Her mother listened silently, then nodded once. I always told your father you were meant for more than cleaning floors. He would be so proud to see this day. Tears pricked at Maylin's eyes. Mom, they've offered me a job playing piano at the hotel. Of course they have, her mother replied with a hint of smugness. They would be fools not to. And Professor Chen from the conservatory was there. He thinks I could play with the Shanghai Philharmonic when they tour here next month. At this, her mother's eyes widened. Chen Hong? The famous pianist? He was your teacher, yes? Maylin nodded. Her mother set down her teacup decisively. Then it is settled. You will play for the Philharmonic. But my job at the hotel, take that too, her mother interrupted. But the Philharmonic is your true path. June, who had been listening from the doorway, stepped into the kitchen. I agree with Grandma. You've been working 3 jobs for years so I could have piano lessons. Go to soccer practice, have a computer for school. Maybe it's your turn now, Mom. Malin looked at her son, suddenly struck by how grown up he seemed. At 17, he was nearly a man, his features a perfect blend of her own and his father's. Since Liang's death 5 years ago from cancer, Jun had stepped up in countless ways, never complaining about their tight budget or modest apartment. I need to think, Mei Lin said finally. This is all happening so fast. The buzzer from the apartment building's entrance sounded. Jun checked the intercom. It's a woman named Vivian Whitmore, he reported. She says she met you last night? Mei Lin smoothed her hair, conscious of still being in her robe. Tell her I'll be right down. Quickly changing into jeans and a simple blouse, Mei Lin went downstairs to find Vivian Whitmore standing in the building's shabby lobby. Despite the early hour, the older woman was impeccably dressed in a tailored pantsuit, her silver hair perfectly styled. Mrs. Whitmore, Mei Lin greeted her, feeling underdressed. This is unexpected. I apologize for arriving unannounced, Vivian said. But after seeing those news vans outside, I thought you might appreciate a quiet place to talk. She gestured to a sleek black car waiting outside. I've reserved a private room for breakfast at the St. Regis. Would you join me? 30 minutes later, seated in a quiet corner of the St. Regis restaurant, Mei Lin sipped fresh orange juice while Vivian Whitmore explained her proposition. My late husband and I established a foundation 20 years ago, Vivian said. The Whitmore Foundation for the Arts. We provide scholarships, fund community programs, and occasionally sponsor promising artists. Mei Lin nodded, unsure where this was leading. What happened last night was extraordinary, Vivian continued. Not just your playing, which was remarkable, but the circumstances. Perry's behavior was inexcusable. She paused, her expression hardening momentarily, but it inadvertently revealed something beautiful. Mrs. Whitmore, please, call me Vivian. The older woman leaned forward. Mei Lin, the foundation would like to sponsor you. We would cover your expenses for 1 year while you prepare for auditions, competitions, whatever path you choose to re-enter the classical music world. Mei Lin sat back, stunned. That's incredibly generous, but I understand your hesitation, Vivian interrupted gently. You have responsibilities, a family to support. The stipend would cover that. Your son is approaching college age, yes? We could assist with that as well. Why? Mei Lin asked simply. Why would you do this for me? Vivian's expression softened. 26 years ago, I was a promising violinist. Not quite at your level, but with potential. Then I met Harrison Whitmore, fell in love, and chose a different path. I don't regret my choices, but I often wonder what might have been. She paused. Some talents are too precious to waste, Mei Lin. By the time Mei Lin returned home, the news vans had multiplied. She slipped in through the service entrance, her mind spinning with possibilities that had seemed impossible just 24 hours earlier. Upstairs, she found Jun and her mother waiting anxiously. Well? Jun asked. What did the rich lady want? Mei Lin took a deep breath. She's offered to sponsor me, to cover our expenses for a year while I try to return to music professionally. Her mother nodded as if this was expected news. Good, when do you start? It's not that simple, Mei Lin began. It is exactly that simple, her mother interrupted. For 20 years you have put everyone else first. Now the universe is giving you a sign. Only a fool would ignore it, Jun grinned. Grandma's right, Mom. This is like those movies where the underdog gets a second chance. You've got to take it. Mei Lin looked around their small apartment at the worn furniture, the faded curtains, the upright electric keyboard in the corner, where she practiced late at night. Could she really change everything now at 52? Start over in a career most people began in their 20s? Her phone buzzed again. Another call from an unknown number. The outside world was clamoring for her attention. Eager to hear the next chapter of the overnight sensation, the cleaning lady with the hands of a concert pianist. Mei Lin silenced the ringer and walked to the keyboard. She powered it on and placed her fingers on the keys. The plastic keys felt nothing like the Steinway at the hotel, but the music was the same. She began to play a simple melody, one of the first pieces she had learned as a child. As the familiar notes filled the apartment, a sense of clarity washed over her. The path forward was uncertain, filled with challenges she couldn't yet imagine. But for the first time in decades, it was a path filled with music. And that made all the difference. 3 weeks later, Maylene sat in a small practice room at the city's music conservatory, her fingers flying over a properly tuned Yamaha grand piano. The clock on the wall showed 11:30 p.m., but she had lost track of time hours ago. The Shanghai Philharmonic rehearsal was tomorrow, and nervousness had driven her to practice well into the night. "You're still here?" Professor Chen appeared in the doorway, leaning on his cane. "The security guard called me. He was concerned about locking up." Maylin stopped playing mid-phrase. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize how late it had gotten." Professor Chen smiled. "No need to apologize. Your dedication is commendable." He eased himself onto a chair nearby. "But perhaps you should rest. Tomorrow is an important day." "I'm not ready," Maylin confessed, flexing her tired fingers. "The third movement still isn't—" "It's perfect," Professor Chen interrupted gently. "I've been listening from the hallway. You've mastered it completely. But what if you play beautifully just as you did at the hotel? What if the orchestra is impressed? What if this is the beginning of something wonderful?" His eyes twinkled. "Those are the what-ifs you should consider." Maylin smiled despite her anxiety. "You always did know how to ease my nerves before a performance. And you always did worry too much," he countered. "Even as a teenager. Remember the national competition in Beijing? You were certain you would fail. And I won first place," Maylin remembered. "But this is different. I'm different. I'm 52 years old, Professor Chen. Most pianists my age have been performing for decades. I've been—" She trailed off. "Living life," he finished for her. "Raising a son. Caring for your mother. Working honestly to support your family. These are not small things, Maylin." She closed the piano lid gently. "No, they're not. But they don't prepare you to play with a world-class orchestra." Professor Chen stood with the help of his cane. "Your talent prepared you for that long ago. The rest is just believing it's still there." He gestured toward the door. "Now let an old man escort you to a taxi. It's far too late for either of us to be out." The next morning, Maylene arrived at the concert hall 2 hours early. The vast empty space echoed with her footsteps as she made her way to the stage where a magnificent concert grand piano waited, its lid propped fully open. She ran her hand along its gleaming surface before sitting down to test the action of the keys. This instrument was leagues above anything she had played in years. Responsive, powerful, perfectly regulated. She played a few scales, then a brief passage from the Grieg concerto, listening to how the notes resonated in the empty hall. "Sounds good." Maylene startled and looked up to see a man in jeans and a t-shirt standing at the edge of the stage. He held a cup of coffee and had the weathered look of someone who spent his life on tour. "I'm Zhao Wei," he said with a friendly nod. "Concertmaster. You must be Maylin, our miracle replacement." "Hardly a miracle," she said, feeling her cheeks warm. "Just filling in?" Wei laughed. "That's not how Conductor Liu described you. He called Professor Chen this morning in a panic. Convinced you'd back out. Said you were the only hope for salvaging the Grieg from our program." Before Maylin could respond, more orchestra members began to filter in. They nodded politely as they unpacked instruments and arranged sheet music. Some cast curious glances her way, clearly wondering about the last-minute substitute who had gone viral online. At precisely 9 a.m., a small, wiry man strode into the hall. Conductor Liu Feng had a reputation for brilliance matched only by his demanding nature. The orchestra members immediately fell silent, all attention focused on his entrance. "Ms. Zhao," he called out, walking briskly toward the piano. "I am told you are prepared for our rehearsal?" Maylin stood and bowed slightly. "Yes, maestro. We shall see," he said, his expression neutral. He turned to the orchestra. "From the beginning, please. Let's see what we're working with." With no further preamble, he raised his baton. Maylin positioned her hands over the keys, took a deep breath, and as the orchestra began the powerful opening, she steeled herself to enter at the right moment. The rehearsal was grueling. Conductor Liu stopped frequently, demanding more precision, different interpretations, faster tempos, slower cadenzas. By the lunch break, Maylin's back ached and her forearms burned, but beneath the physical discomfort was a growing sense of elation. She was holding her own. As the musicians dispersed for lunch, Conductor Liu approached the piano. "You play differently than I expected," he said, studying her with sharp eyes. Maylin tensed. "I'm sorry if it's not what you wanted." No, he waved a hand dismissively. "You bring something unusual to the piece. Something lived in." He tilted his head thoughtfully. Most young pianists play Grieg with technical precision but miss the emotion. You have both. It's refreshing. Coming from the notoriously hard-to-please conductor, this was high praise. Mei-Lin thanked him quietly. We rehearse again tomorrow, he continued. Today showed promise. Tomorrow we will find perfection. With a curt nod, he left her sitting at the piano. Wei, the concertmaster, approached with a grin. That's the closest thing to approval I've heard from him in 3 years of touring. You must have made quite an impression. Outside the concert hall, Mei-Lin found June waiting, a sandwich in a paper bag extended toward her. Thought you might be hungry, he said. How was it? Terrifying, she admitted, accepting the sandwich gratefully. Wonderful. Overwhelming. They found a bench in a small park across from the hall, and Mei-Lin ate while Jun filled her in on his day at school. The normalcy of their conversation grounded her after the intensity of the morning. Grandma wanted to come, June said. But her arthritis is acting up. She made me promise to record a video of your performance on Sunday. If I make it to Sunday, Mei-Lin sighed. The conductor is very demanding. June grinned. Mom, I've seen you work 16-hour shifts on 4 hours of sleep, then come home and help me with trigonometry. You can handle one picky conductor. His confidence warmed her heart. When did you get so wise? Must have gotten it from my mom, he replied with a cheeky smile. Back at the apartment that evening, Mei-Lin found a delivery box waiting. Inside was an elegant black dress with a note from Vivian Whitmore. For your debut, break a leg. Her mother examined the dress with approving hands. Good quality. This woman has taste. It's too much, Mei-Lin protested. Nonsense. Her mother replied firmly. When you perform, you must look the part. She held the dress up against Mei-Lin. Try it on. I will make alterations if needed. As Mei-Lin changed into the dress, she heard her phone ringing. Jun answered it in the living room, then called out, Mom, it's Mr. Blackwell from the hotel. She took the call, still adjusting the dress. Mr. Blackwell? Is everything all right? Perfectly fine, he assured her. I'm calling because the Sunday brunch crowd has tripled since you started playing for us. Our guests have been asking when you'll return. After this weekend, she promised, once the Philharmonic performances are finished. Excellent, he said, then hesitated. There's one other thing. Perry Whitmore came by today. Mei-Lin tensed at the mention of the man whose cruel joke had inadvertently changed her life. He asked me to pass along a message, Blackwell continued. He wanted to apologize for his behavior and, well, he's purchased tickets for all 3 performances this weekend, front row. After hanging up, Mei-Lin stood by the window, watching the city lights blink on as dusk fell. 3 weeks ago, she had been cleaning floors at the Grand Palmer Hotel, her dreams packed away like winter clothes in summer. Now she was preparing to perform with the Shanghai Philharmonic, sponsored by one of the city's wealthiest arts patrons, with a part-time position as a hotel pianist waiting afterward. It seemed impossible, yet here she was, wearing a concert dress that probably cost more than a month of her former salary. Her phone chimed with a text message from Professor Chen. One more rehearsal tomorrow, then you show the world what I've always known. The days that followed passed in a blur of rehearsals, adjustments, more rehearsals. Conductor Liu proved as demanding as his reputation suggested, but beneath his exacting standards, Mei-Lin sensed genuine appreciation for her interpretation of the Grieg concerto. By Saturday night, the eve of the first performance, she felt as ready as she would ever be. Sitting at her small keyboard at home, she played through the most challenging passages once more, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought faltered. June appeared in the doorway, yawning. Mom, it's past midnight. Even concert pianists need sleep. Mei-Lin smiled at her son. Just one more run-through. That's what you said an hour ago, he pointed out. The neighbors are going to start complaining about your headphones-less practicing. She sighed, knowing he was right. Fine, bet it is. Later, lying in the darkness of her room, Mei-Lin found sleep elusive. Tomorrow she would step onto a concert stage for the first time since she was 25 years old. The thought was both thrilling and terrifying. From her nightstand, her phone glowed with an incoming text. It was Rosita from the hotel. We're all coming tomorrow. The whole staff pitched in for tickets. You show them what a cleaning lady can do. Mei-Lin smiled in the darkness. Whatever happened tomorrow, she would not be alone. She had her son, her mother, her colleagues. her teacher, and now, somehow, a whole community cheering her on. Perhaps that was the most surprising gift of all, in this unexpected second chance, discovering that she had never been as alone as she had felt during those long years of work and sacrifice. Music had found her again, yes. But in doing so, it had also shown her the connections that had been there all along, waiting to be acknowledged. With that comforting thought, Maylin finally drifted off to sleep, dreaming of pianos that sang despite being out of tune, and of paths that wound back to where they were always meant to lead. Sunday morning arrived with golden autumn sunlight streaming through Maylin's bedroom window. She had slept surprisingly well, waking naturally before her alarm. For a moment she lay still, taking in the quiet of the apartment, savoring the calm before what promised to be one of the most significant days of her life. In the kitchen, she found her mother already awake, brewing a pot of tea. At 78, Li Jiao still rose with the sun, a habit formed during decades of farming in rural China before moving to the city. "Drink," her mother said, placing a steaming cup before her. "Special blend. Good for nerves." Maylin smiled. "Are you nervous, Mom?" "Not me," her mother replied with a dismissive wave. "You have nothing to fear. Music has always been in your bones." As Maylin sipped the fragrant tea, her mother disappeared into her room, returning moments later with a small wooden box. "I have been saving this," she said, placing it on the table. Inside the box was a jade hairpin, delicately carved with a phoenix design. "It was your grandmother's," her mother explained. "She wore it when she sang in the village festivals. Then I wore it at my wedding. Now it is yours for today." Maylin carefully lifted the pin, touched by the gesture and the family connection. "It's beautiful, Mom, thank you." "Beauty should be shared," her mother said simply. "Like your music." Jun emerged from his room, hair tousled from sleep but eyes bright with excitement. "Today's the big day," he announced, grabbing a bowl for cereal. "You ready, Mom?" "As ready as I'll ever be," Maylin replied. They ate breakfast together, the conversation flowing naturally between mundane topics and occasional mentions of the upcoming performance. This normalcy was comforting to Maylin, a reminder that regardless of what happened on stage today, her family remained her anchor. At noon, Maylin arrived at the concert hall for final sound checks and preparation. The afternoon performance would begin at 3 p.m., leaving just enough time to work through any last-minute adjustments with the orchestra. The hall bustled with activity, stagehands adjusting lighting, sound engineers testing microphones, musicians warming up in various corners. The energy was electric, a mix of tension and anticipation that Maylin found both intimidating and invigorating. In the dressing room assigned to her, she carefully changed into Vivian's gift, the elegant black concert dress that fit her perfectly. As she secured her mother's jade pin in her hair, there was a knock at the door. "Come in," she called. Professor Chen entered, followed by Vivian Whitmore. Both smiled approvingly at her appearance. "You look every inch the concert pianist," Vivian said warmly. "How are you feeling?" "Terrified," Maylin admitted. "Excited, grateful, all at once." Professor Chen nodded in understanding. "The best performances come from exactly that mix of emotions." "I wanted to tell you," Vivian said, "that regardless of what happens today, the Foundation's offer stands. 1 year of sponsorship with no strings attached. And I have news as well," Professor Chen added. 3 conservatories have expressed interest in having you teach master classes. After they heard about your rehearsals with the Philharmonic, Maylin took a deep breath, overwhelmed by these possibilities that had seemed impossible just weeks ago. "Thank you both for believing in me when I had stopped believing in myself." Another knock interrupted them. Conductor Lu's assistant poked her head in. 20 minutes, Ms. Zhao." As Professor Chen and Vivian left to take their seats, Maylin took a few moments alone. She closed her eyes and did the breathing exercises she had taught herself years ago to calm pre-performance nerves. In 2, 3, 4, out 2, 3, 4. When she opened her eyes again, she was ready. The journey from dressing room to backstage passed in a blur. She could hear the hall filling with people, the murmur of voices, the occasional cough or rustle of programs. Peeking through the curtain, she saw the seats filling rapidly. In the front row, as promised, sat Perry Whitmore, looking significantly more humble than he had at the hotel event. A few rows back, she spotted June and her mother, the latter dressed in her finest kipao, saved for only the most special occasions. Nearby were Thomas Blackwell and a group from the hotel, Rosita, Davy, and several others from the staff, all dressed in their Sunday best. The orchestra members took their places, the concertmaster Wei giving her an encouraging nod as he passed. Finally, Conductor Liu appeared, shaking her hand firmly. "Remember," he said quietly, "the orchestra follows you in the cadenzas. Make them wait for your resolution. Build the tension." Then he was gone, striding onto the stage to enthusiastic applause. Maylin heard him welcome the audience, explain the last-minute change in soloists, and then introduce her name. The applause swelled again, expectant. This was it. Taking one final deep breath, Maylin stepped onto the stage. The lights were brighter than she had anticipated, momentarily blinding her. She bowed to the audience, then to the orchestra, and finally settled herself at the piano. The hall fell silent, hundreds of people waiting for the first notes. Conductor Liu raised his baton. Maylin positioned her hands. With a decisive downbeat, the orchestra launched into the powerful opening of Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor. The first movement unfolded exactly as they had rehearsed. Maylin's entrance was confident, her fingers finding the keys with precision and emotion. As she played, the years fell away. She was not 52, not a single mother who had cleaned hotel rooms for a living. She was simply a musician, speaking through her instrument. During the cadenza, she did as Conductor Liu had suggested, building tension, making the audience and orchestra wait for resolution. She could feel the collective held breath of the hall, the anticipation as she drew out the moment before releasing it in a cascade of notes that flowed back into the orchestral theme. The second movement brought a gentler, more introspective mood. Maylin swayed slightly as she played, lost in the lyrical passages that contrasted so beautifully with the drama of the first movement. In the quiet section, she could hear the absolute silence of the audience, the rare, magical silence that comes only when listeners are completely captivated. Then came the third movement. With its folk-inspired themes and technical challenges, Maylin's hands moved across the keyboard with a confidence that surprised even her. The hours of practice, the guidance from Professor Chen, the demanding rehearsals with Conductor Liu, all had prepared her for this moment. As the concerto built toward its final, triumphant conclusion, Maylin caught a glimpse of her son in the audience. Jun was leaning forward in his seat, his expression a mixture of pride and awe. Beside him, her mother sat with perfect posture, tears streaming unashamedly down her face. The sight gave Maylin a final surge of energy and emotion. She poured everything into the last passages, all the years of sacrifice, the dreams deferred, the quiet moments practicing on a keyboard with headphones late at night. All of it culminated in these final, jubilant notes that rang through the concert hall. The last chord hung in the air for a breathless moment. Then the audience erupted. The standing ovation was immediate and unanimous. People rose to their feet, applauding with genuine enthusiasm. Maylin stood from the piano bench, slightly dizzy from the intensity of the performance and the response. She bowed deeply to the audience, then turned to acknowledge the orchestra. Conductor Liu gestured for her to take another bow, his usually stern expression softened by what might have been approval. The applause continued unabated. From the front row, Perry Whitmore applauded vigorously, his expression transformed by genuine admiration. Maylin took 3 curtain calls before the audience finally allowed her to leave the stage. In the wings, Professor Chen waited with tears in his eyes. "That," he said, embracing her, "is the pianist I always knew you could be." Backstage became a whirlwind of congratulations. Orchestra members stopped by to express their appreciation. Vivian Whitmore brought flower arrangements from the foundation. Jun pushed through the crowd to hug his mother tightly. "You were amazing, Mom," he whispered. Everyone was blown away. Her mother approached more slowly, aided by a cane, her face serene. She didn't speak, simply took Maylin's hand and squeezed it, the gesture conveying everything words could not. Later, at a small reception hosted by the Philharmonic, Maylin found herself surrounded by people eager to speak with her. Music critics, conservatory directors, representatives from recording companies, all wanted to discuss her performance and future possibilities. Ms. Zhao, one particularly enthusiastic young woman from a record label, said, "We'd be interested in discussing a recording contract. Your interpretation of Grieg was fresh, emotional, Authentic in a way that's rare these days. Maylin smiled, still processing the reality of her new circumstances. Thank you. It's all happening very quickly. That's how it works sometimes, Wei, the concertmaster commented as he passed by. Years of nothing, then everything all at once. As the reception wound down, Maylin found a quiet moment with Professor Chen, Vivian, and her family. What comes next? Jun asked. More concerts? Tours, albums? Maylin looked around at the faces of those who had supported her through this transformation. Her practical mother who had always believed in her talent. Her son who had encouraged her to take a chance. Her former teacher who had recognized her gift after all these years. The society woman who had offered support with no strings attached. I'm not sure, she admitted. But whatever it is, I know I want to keep playing. And perhaps... She paused, considering an idea that had been forming. Perhaps teaching as well, helping others who might not have traditional paths to music. The Whitmore Foundation could help with that, Vivian offered immediately. A scholarship program, perhaps, for talented individuals from underprivileged backgrounds? I think that would be wonderful, Maylin agreed. As they left the concert hall together, stepping into the cool evening air, Maylin felt a profound sense of completion. Not an ending, but a circle closing, then opening again in a new direction. Jun walked beside her, chattering excitedly about social media reactions to her performance. Her mother moved slowly on her other side, leaning slightly on Maylin's arm but walking tall with pride. Above them, the first stars appeared in the darkening sky. Maylin paused for a moment to look up at them, remembering how as a child in rural China she had wished on stars for a piano of her own. Life had taken her on a very different journey than she had imagined then. There had been hardships and detours, sacrifices and losses. But here she was, exactly where she was meant to be, with music once again at the center of her life. All because someone had told her to play a broken piano as a joke. Sometimes, Maylin reflected as she continued walking with her family, life's most beautiful melodies emerge from the most unexpected beginnings.